you do podcasts, so you know kind of how it works. But yeah, let's get rocking and rolling. Rob, so excited to have you on. We've been talking about doing this for weeks. You're a tough man to tie down. You're always on the road, always out traveling, doing your thing. We're going to jump right into some really important sales leadership that you do. But before we do that, you shared some information with me when we talked offline, a little bit about kind of your personal journey even the last few years, which I think is very relevant, and the story is fascinating. Do you mind if we start there?
Great place to start.
Yeah.
Great place to start. It's interesting. You and me met a long time ago.
20 years?
Before Seth was even around, man.
Yeah.
That was just an idea.
Yeah. And after 25 years of being married to someone, I had a pretty nasty divorce. And anybody who's been through that knows that when you start over, it's not easy. It's hard to start over. And started over, had to learn a lot of things, do a lot of things, hired coaches to help me figure out how to start better than I'd finished. And just as I had things going, and we'll talk about a lot of those things, like I didn't know the power of mindset and identity. And I'm so glad. My biggest expense, Steve, is learning how to treat my mind as a muscle. That might be the thing that everybody should learn about, because those that learn how to do that, they go places other people only could dream about.
Explain that. What do you mean about that?
So one of the things when I was in that nastiness, everywhere I looked, it was bad. Like everything was broke, everything. And when you look around and all you see is darkness, then you think the world is not a good place, right? And so I had a mindset coach that taught me how to take charge of what my personal identity was. And that's a really cool conversation. We started in the physical realm, and then we started to get into the rest. And your identity is how you define yourself. And there's this really killer analogy of a guy who found an eagle egg, and he put it in a chicken coop. And the eagle and the chicken eggs kind of hatched at the same time, and this eagle is raised as a chicken. And it did what chickens do. Walked around the ground pecking, this eagle, pecking around, eating seeds and shit.
Thought it was a chicken.
It thought it was a chicken. And then one day as it's grown up, it sees this big eagle fly, and it says to the chicken, "What's that? That looks amazing." And the chicken says, "That's the eagle. It's the king of the sky. We're chickens. We're tied to the ground." And that eagle never learned to fly. That eagle, whatever. And so there's a lot of morals to the story. What do you put on? Like, what's your identity of who you are? And who do you surround yourself with? And here's an example. When I hired my mindset coach is amazing. And we worked on identity first, like learning to change your identity. Because, Steve, your identity is who you think you are. And it's based in pictures. A human being's mind thinks in pictures. So, Seth, Steve, I could say pink elephant. Right now, you guys have a picture of a pink elephant in your head. You're welcome. It'll be there for a little while. But you don't have the words pink elephant. If you do, it's pictures of the words. And so maybe it's a real elephant that's pink. Maybe it's a stuffed animal. Maybe it's some cartoon character. But you have a picture of a pink elephant right now. And the way that we think of ourselves is a set of pictures. And the pictures of who we are, what we do, who we hang out with, what we're capable of. Now, where do you think most people's pictures come from? This is a really important question.
Probably what they've done in the past.
Boom. Most people's pictures come from their past. So you want to know why most people don't get more than 3 to 5% better in a given time? They accept a 3% raise from their company or whatever. Because who I am is tied to all those years in the past. And elite performers learn, I'm going to make a new set of pictures, and they're going to come from the future.
So they're stuck on limiting beliefs based on what they've done in the past instead of thinking bigger, shifting the mindset. How would you suggest that somebody overcomes that? Is that a
Starts
coach?
with identity. Starts with identity. You got to learn, just like when you're trying something on. Like, Steve, you got a good looking shirt on there. You know, if you got one and you tried it on, you didn't like how it fit, you wouldn't keep wearing it, right?
Yeah, put something else on.
You take it back. If you ordered on Amazon, you send it back, maybe even with a nasty note, like, get this out of here. Too many times we have something that doesn't fit, that we don't like, and we don't know how to take it off. And so here's an example of how you start. Like I have a friend who's trying right now to quit smoking. And he says his I am on his self-identity is, I am trying to quit smoking. Now, is that an identity of someone who stopped smoking?
No, it's I'm not a smoker.
That's what it needs to be. And once you have an identity of who you are and what you're going to be, then you go to your I ams. And Seth played baseball for me, for all the listeners, years and years ago. 1 year, and then he quit. I was that bad of a coach, you never wanted to play again.
I was that bad of a player.
No. I worked hard to get you on that team, man. And Steve knows. I was like, you got to have Seth be on this team. And there's a really great example, and you won't know this, Seth, but Steve, maybe you will. For years, the Boston Red Sox had this curse of the Bambino. They traded Babe Ruth away, and they never made the World Series ever again. And in 1986, they finally made it back, I think, since 1918. And in 1986, they're playing the New York Mets, and they're up 3-2. If they can win this last game, they're going to win. It's game over, World Series over, most important, curse of the Bambino over. I promise I'm going to land this plane. You're going to like where this ends. And so they're up by a run, bottom of the last inning, 2 outs. All they need is a strikeout, a pop fly, or best yet, a routine ground ball. And now we're going to push pause. The guy playing first base is a dude named Bill Buckner had been playing for a long time. He's had won the Gold Glove before, which means he's one of the top 2 in his position defensively. And if you think, Seth, when we were playing with that team years ago, how many ground balls did we take together? Like so many.
A lot. I took one to the face.
You took one to the face. Yeah, you took a hard shot to the face. So if you think of a multi-year guy, almost 40 years old, how many ground balls do you think Bill Buckner had taken before that game in the World Series?
Hundreds of thousands, if not a million.
More than the 10,000 that you're required to be called an expert, right?
Sure.
So here, I'm going to tell you what happened 19 days before that game. So remember, 2 outs, bottom last inning. I got a guy who's had hundreds of thousands of reps. 19 days before, he'd been in an interview with the Sporting News, which back then was a really strong competitor to Sports Illustrated. And he said in the interview, I'm going to say it wrong, but you fact check me and you'll see I'm right. He said, the dream is you're going to have an amazing game and win. Here's what gets cool. The nightmare is that you let a routine ground ball go through your legs and you lose. And then he says, I think a lot of it's just fate and there's not much we can do about it. And in that next pitch.
This is before?
This is
19 days before.
19 days before, okay.
19 days before. Like I said, look it up. I use it in my training. I teach and train leaders all around the world, and mindset is where everything starts. There's triple helix of DNA. We're going to talk about, you told me to tell my story, we're going to talk about DNA. It's going to be really important to us.
Yeah.
And so 19 days earlier, he said what his nightmare was. So Seth, what's his nightmare?
The ground ball going through the legs.
Next pitch. Ground ball, not a high hopper, routine ground ball, and it went through his legs. 2-run score, the Mets win that game, it's tied 3-3, and then they went on to win the World Series. I could tell you all kinds of stories like this. Like here we are in Salt Lake City, Utah, and Pistol Pete Maravich, we're all basketball fans here. When he made the All-Star team in 1974, he said to the local newspaper, hey, I don't want to play in the NBA and be an All-Star and then die of a heart attack when I'm 40 years old. Guess how Pete died?
Heart attack.
Guess what age?
Was he 40?
He was 40, playing pickup basketball.
Oh, my gosh.
This is so crazy to me because in 2020, when I first got into mortgage, I'd been working under Steve for, 6 months, got my license, and literally in, I think, December, I was meeting with financial advisor, and he goes, how much do you think you're going to make? I had just gotten into it. No idea. Zero idea. Brand new. I said, I think I'll make X amount. I was within 5% of that by the end of 2021.
I hope it was a big number.
It was medium. It wasn't. But what's crazy, because I didn't want to be crazy, but it's nuts that you bring that up because I've thought about that since then. What if I would have said 2 times what I said? What would have happened? Would I have then worked like I was going to make that much?
Boom.
You know what I mean? And I think that's where when people talk about manifesting, I don't think you're actually – I'd be interested to get your take. I don't know that you're actually manifesting. It's that you're obsessing over it. And so when you keep thinking about it, then you're going to do what it takes to get there.
So once you get that identity, I am a X number of dollars guy.
Yeah.
Then what happens is your IMs start to surround that. You say, oh, I am going to hang out here. I am going to be doing these things. I'm going to be whatever. So your I ams are super important. The words that come after the word I am they are the most powerful words in any language. I am what? You could say, I'm just lucky to have a job. That just feels bad in the studio just saying that, doesn't it?
Sure, yeah.
Or you could say, I'm going to do 3x what I did last year. And your I am has to support your identity. So when you start saying, this is who I'm going to be, I'm an eagle or I'm whatever I am. And so this goes back to my story. So I'm surrounded by darkness. And it would be easy to say, man, all of my I ams were messed up back then. They were bad. I was in the darkest place I've ever been. And I'm so grateful I had someone that taught me how to build something to get out of that.
I'm going to stop you because we've been talking for 10 or 15 minutes. And Rob, I've known you for 2 decades.
Yeah.
Maybe slightly longer. You're in the best place that I've ever seen you in.
Thank you.
You sound phenomenal. You look phenomenal. You look like you're in a good place. And so honestly, kudos.
Thank you.
I got to give you some some ownership of
it was intentional.
Not only preaching these things, but I can tell you
it.
practice it. And this is great for the listeners. Great. But this is great for us. I feel like we're getting some free coaching from one of the experts in the arena. So sorry to cut you off, but I have to tell you that because I would forget, and I want that to be on air.
But thanks, Steve. And I had to start a new business. I've been running a tech company. Everything went away as part of this nastiness, and I had to start something over. To your point, Seth, I got this mindset coach, and he taught me. The first thing he asked me, you guys will laugh. First thing, I was so messed up. He's like, Rob, the physical realm is the easiest realm to fix. I'm like, okay. He's like, I want you to write down 100 physical things you want to still get in your life and 100 experiences you want to have in your life. What? Okay, that seems stupid. It seems materialistic. I'm like, that's not really. He's like, just stay with me. The other elements we're going to get to, but you got to get the physical one right first because it will help fuel the rest. So I went back, and 2 weeks later I was supposed to meet with him. I could only come up with 18 physical things and 12 experiences. And I went back, and he's like, this is pathetic. And he's like, all you're doing is giving me things that you think are reasonable. And I was like, oh, that was a big eye opener. He's like, you have this limited mindset, and you're giving me stuff that you feel is reasonable. It's like, you got to give me, and he slapped the table like that. He's like, you got to give me stuff that's unreasonable right now, unrealistic. You can't do it in a month or a quarter. It's going to take you time. And so he helped me think big. And so we had some stupid cars show up in there, and we had, I was like, I'm going to get 2 of these cars in one day. And my son Baylor, who Seth knows, is like, hey, Dad, when you get both of those cars in one day, you're going to need somebody to help you pick them up, right? I'm like, yeah, that's right. And,
of course you did.
Yeah. And it was interesting. And to do it, I needed to build a new business. So at first I was like, man, I just got to get back to making 6 figures again because I was starting from zero. And so when I was thinking of that, it was literally 45 days and I was there. It was 45 days. Now, there was reasons I did very intentional things. And I was like, 6 figures, that was pretty cool. Like, now I want to start having 6-figure quarters. Let's do that. And all of a sudden, it was happening. I was like, I want 6 figures in a month. And I've done that 8 times. And I was like, the way I thought as I started changing it, I started to do all the other things that made that happen. I don't say that for any other reason than to give an example that the bigger I thought, the bigger I played and acted. It wasn't like I sat in a room and manifested and thought about it and it just showed up. I did the work. It's like you said, Seth.
Because you have to be self-aware.
Dude,
right?
You have to do the work.
You have to be self-aware. Yeah. It's not, oh, I'm going to do this and then it's given to you. You have to be self-aware, realistic, and then the work.
You got to do it.
You got to come in. The work's got to come in.
Like
sure.
I watched you, Steve. You've built an incredible business and you did the work.
Sure.
You didn't just sit around and say, oh, that'd be nice if. No, you do the freaking work. And so that's why whenever I start, I have found there's, like in human DNA, we have a triple helix of our DNA. It's what makes what you look like. It's how you learn. It's how athletic you are. It's all that stuff, right? There's 3 strands. I found that in performance, there's 3 strands of that DNA. So here's the story I think you wanted me to share. After I had gotten through all the nastiness, I started to do well, and it was like a year and a half after I'd done that physical thing. The first car that I wanted to get was this Range Rover, and I had all these rules. I had all these rules for it that would make it so I get it. And I got it. And I remember as I was getting ready, I had the money, I had all the stuff. I was going to buy it cash. I had to wrap it matte black because I told you that's my jam. And I got ready to buy it. I remember it was. I remember the day I had it lined up. And I called my mindset coach and I said, I think next year is going to be hard in the economy. I don't think I want to buy the car. I value the cash more than spending a lot of money on a car. And he said, all right. So he walked me through, has this changed? Has this changed? Has this changed? I'm like, no. He's like, oh, so to use what you said, Seth. So you are having a limiting belief and you're going to have a scarcity mentality instead of an abundant one. And I'm like, oh. He's like, go buy the freaking car and send me a picture of it and stop being a pussy. That's what he told me.
I'm going to clip that.
Real talk.
That's what he told me.
That's a clip.
And every time I drive that car.
What's his number?
Yeah, exactly. That's what he told me. And so I get through all of that. Good stuff's happening. My mindset's awesome. And I start having these weird things start happening. And when I go to the doctor, it turns out I have cancer. And I'm like, no. Like, I've overcome so much. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't get a break. And then they start talking in really serious words, saying stuff like colon cancer, stage 4, metastasis. It's everywhere. I don't believe them. I'm like, the Utah doctors don't know what they're talking about. So I flew to Boston, to Mass General. I flew to Florida, then Texas and California. I got multiple opinions, and they all said, dude, you should have been here 2.5, 3 years ago. That's what they said. And I said, well, I don't want to.
That's heavy.
Oh.
Heavy.
You have no idea, Steve. And I said, I don't want to be in a doctor's office or a hospital taking radiation treatments and just dying there. And they said, well, then we have good news finally. You're so far gone, we don't recommend that. We recommend you chase your bucket list as far as your finances allow and enjoy every day you can. I didn't tell my kids. I didn't tell anybody. I was alone. I took it all. I didn't tell my clients. I didn't tell anybody. And for 2 months, I pouted. And it was woe is me. And as I thought about how unfair it was, all of a sudden, all those positive things I'd done and overcome and done with my mindset, they started to go away. And Tim, my guy, was like, okay, we can fix this. I can't fix cancer, but we can fix your head. Anyway, short version story. About a year ago, Steve and Seth, I was given 18 months to live, about a year ago. And I burned 2 of those 18 months pouting, which is stupid when you look back. And then I started doing research, and the short version of a long story, I found some new treatments that were not approved in the United States that I would have to go out of the country to do, that no insurance would pay for, that every dollar that I had saved as I started over again, it would require everything I had because nobody would finance it. Insurance won't pay for it because it's not allowed here. And the worst part is the one that I picked, it had been invented in the University of Tokyo less than a year earlier. And there's these people in Mexico that thought that I might be a good candidate for it. And the short version of the story, they mutated my DNA. They built a different DNA molecule, put it in me, and it was designed to be like a Terminator to go out and like kill those cancer cells. Now, if it worked, it would cure that type of cancer. But if it didn't, it would kill me. It was either going to cure me or kill me. And forget about 12 months left to live or how many. I would have like 12 minutes, right? And so I thought about it, and I went through all of these things. As a dad, Steve, you'll relate to this. Like, I didn't have to worry about a spouse anymore. But I was like, okay, do I spend all this money and roll the dice, or do I just like leave it for my kids? Because you're thinking about legacy.
Sure.
I don't think that's weird, but that went through my head. I decided to do it. I decided to go down, and so I finally told my kids what was going on, and they didn't know how to handle it. You know, Seth, you know Baylor, and it was really, Baylor and I are really close, like you two are. I've always think it's cool watching you guys work together, and so I relate to that because Baylor and I do similar things. And they didn't know what to say. Like, what do you say when Dad says, I'm dying, and nobody can fix me, but I'm going to go down and do this? And I'll never forget, I wrote a letter to my kids the night before I left. They all showed up the night before I left. I wanted to have everything written down. Going into it, I wrote a book of the 20 experiences of my life, some really bad, some really good, and the lessons that I learned and why it made me the man and the dad that I am. I looked at my business and had my finance guy said, these are my customers who need refunds because they paid me money. I'm not going to leave them holding the bag. Like, if I don't come back, your job, John Dismuke, you know John Dismuke?
Johnny D.
Johnny D was going to be giving calls to my customers and sending money to them. And I hopped on a plane, ended up down in Mexico. The night before I went in, I called each of my kids again and talked to each one of them for the last time, I thought. And it's what's interesting was I went back to my mindset stuff, Seth and Steve, and I remember I put on my very best suit. I got my game face on, and I went to mine was I am going down to beat cancer. I remember taking a picture of myself as I walked on the plane. I sent it to my kids as what might be the last thing they got from me. As I talked to them, I'll never forget, I sat outside in Mexico and my senses were alive. Like, I heard things different. The air tasted different. Like, I was tingling everywhere. And then in the morning, you're in like this med spa, like they do the stuff in your room and they bring it in and they got me ready. I remember they put that mask on me and I thought, is this going to be the last thing I ever see or do? And when I woke up, I was on my side. I had tubes coming out my back and my front ends. And I remember when I came to, I saw that bed in the other room because you're supposed to bring someone. And I chose to go alone. I didn't bring anybody. I went down by myself. I didn't want my kids. Baylor was like, let me go down with you. I'm like, if I don't make it, I don't want you to have to get me back across the border. I don't want you to have to do that. So I went down by myself, and as I came to, my first thought was, is this what it's like to be dead? And then I saw that bed over there, and I realized I was in the room, and I started to bawl uncontrollably. I weep and weep. And the nurse comes running in, and she's like, are you okay? I'm like, I've never been better. Like, she's like, it went as good as it could go. We won't know for like 72 hours, like if it's working the right way. So I stayed there for a few days, and it worked really well. And my cancer count started coming down, and I went home a few days later. And man, on the way home, Seth and Steve, the big thing I had in my mind was I am no longer a survivor. My identity was not to survive like it was when I went down. Now my identity is I'm going to thrive. I'm going to look at every part of life different. I'm living on borrowed time, and I'm going to do the stuff that I might have thought was unreasonable before. I'm going to go for it. And every part of me is now, I'm glad you say I look better because that's intentional, Steve. Like, I appreciate life, and I think we have a responsibility to live it, not survive it. So that's
I have chills right now.
Thank you.
That's one of the craziest stories I've ever heard. Super happy for you.
Thank you.
I don't even have words.
I think, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. Your perspective, because of your background in coaching,
Yep.
then having to go through that personally, do you think that that experience coming out of it, knowing, hey, now I've survived this.
Hell yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You knew how to process that and use it as fuel because of your background, because of your mindset coach, but because of all the years of coaching about, goals and mindset and living life and pushing every day and getting the most out of things and chasing. Yeah. When you came out of that, did that just take the belief you already had, throw it on steroids, put it in an F1 car, and just...
The first feeling was gratitude. Overwhelming gratitude.
Interesting.
Overwhelming gratitude.
Explain that.
I was supposed to be dead, Steve. Like, when you're told you have a 22% chance of living, like, I hope you never have to hear that. Like, at the end of the day, what I would tell people is, we're all on the clock. Every one of us. Nobody gets out of here alive.
Right.
And, but I made it, and I was overwhelmingly grateful for so many things. Grateful that the procedure worked. Grateful that I found out about it because, like, it's not like broadcast. It's like this thing that's emerging that you can see some papers on, but people aren't aren't broadcasting it because it's so new. And grateful that I had just enough money to do it. Like starting over and 2 years later, you have to pay for that. Like I was grateful for that. I was grateful that I had time with my kids. Grateful that I was going to be able to see my other 2 kids get married, and that you don't understand, like everything. I started being so grateful, and when my attitude went from woe is me to holy shit, I'm so grateful for like these little things, the taste of the air. I'm grateful for the taste of the air, Steve.
It's beautiful that you say you were grateful. I'm sure you know Gary Vaynerchuk.
Of course, yeah.
So Gary talks a lot about, he's never gone through an experience like this, but he had a rough upbringing. But he talks a lot about gratitude for just being on earth, for just being able to be born, for being a human being. It sounds so similar to your journey and coming out with this gratitude. And I don't think that you had to think about that much. I think it's like, I just came out stoked to be alive, bro.
Dude, I'm alive.
I'm alive.
I'm going to go see my kids in 2 days. Let's go. And like, no. And so, I don't hit snooze alarms anymore. When the alarm goes off, I'm like, let's go.
You're up before the alarm.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Like everybody, like my clients all laugh because my 2 favorite words are "let's go," and every day. And so when I work with people in the world of performance, I go back to DNA, and so that's how I start when I work with groups. I'm like, I tell them how I had to change my DNA. I wish it was as cool as Spider-Man. When he changed his DNA, he could climb walls and shoot webs and all that stuff. I'll take overcoming cancer. I'll take it. It's not out of the woods. I still got a little bit of stuff I got to overcome, but man, the scary part's behind me.
We could sit in this for a long time because there's so much to unpack with your story. But let's hit on passion, because you come back, you have this gratitude, but you're passionate, like your countenance. Just when you walked up, you parked in the parking lot next to us here, and I had to come.
Yeah,
hey, Rob, you're in the wrong parking lot.
You're in the wrong spot.
You're in the
yeah, you dummy.
But I saw you coming, and the countenance is a passionate countenance. Cool. And it's almost like there's, this passion that comes with you. You can feel it. It's an energy. Can we talk about passion?
100%.
I'm taking this where it's going to go just sitting here talking to you. Passion is something that you do very, very well.
One of my favorite words.
Right. Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Want to talk about passion?
Yeah. Let's melt in that for a little bit. And I want to hear, how you would coach that. Let me give you an example. Take a salesperson who considers himself a sales veteran, okay?
Yep.
He's been doing it 10, 12, 15 years. He's maybe mid-level, high-level on his team, whatever he's selling, right? Doesn't matter. But how do you take someone like that, assess where he's currently at, teach him, dude, you need to level up. You don't have enough passion. But he's already old school. He's saying to himself, I got this. I got the skill set. Here's my numbers. They're fine, right? How do you say, dude, you're capable of 4x, 10x what you're doing? How do you put that passion into him? Because you can't take Rob's gasoline that's in your body, pour it in a bucket, have him drink it, and the next day he's got octane boost. How do you take that kid and develop passion? Can passion be developed?
So first of all, you picked the hardest coaching situation, is coaching someone who's doing all right. Most people leave people that are hitting their numbers alone, right?
Of course. I have sales guys. I'm asking you the hard questions because
I love that
these
question.
are real
it's
questions.
It's my favorite question.
Yeah.
Because it's the hardest one. It's easy to take. Most people think, let's coach the underperformers and coach them up or coach them out.
Get rid of them.
Yeah. Coach them up or coach them out. Like, you're either stepping up or you're stepping off. Either way, you better start stepping. And but when you got someone old school, I've been doing it like, I'm going to answer the question. I think of this awesome desk. Like, I hope people can see your table that you guys built. I think of it like as a landing strip. I got to land the plane. So it's easy to land a plane on a long, but if it's a battleship, you got to land that plane faster. If it's an aircraft carrier, so I want to land this fast. But when I was running sales for a really big company, publicly traded, 1,000 reps, I was in my early 30s when I got that leadership job. I remember I spent my time going and meeting as many of the reps as I could to start. I just wanted to observe. That's one of the biggest mistakes leaders make, is they look at reported data instead of observed data. It's one of the most important things. If you want to be a leader who can do that with someone, you have to have a connection. Everyone communicates, very few people connect.
So let me get this straight. I want to understand what you're saying. They're reading the metrics of the sales numbers and not...
Leave me alone, Steve. I'm hitting my number. What the hell do you want from me?
Not connecting with the actual salespeople.
The person.
As to what they're doing, how they're doing it. They're just looking at the metrics, the numbers, the digits.
So if I hadn't come here from an event where I had to be dressed up, I would have been here wearing one of my shirts. I have 20 choices elite leaders make that average ones don't make, and have a shirt for each one. My favorite one is choice 2, growth over grind. I was going to wear that for the show. And most people choose the grind, and that's not a way you win. That's a way you survive. Growth is how you thrive, baby. And so when I started with this company, I went out to watch everybody, connect with everybody. And I'll never forget, it was in a rural area. The dude had been with the organization longer than I was alive.
Really?
He just hit
old dog.
Old dude, hitting his number, leave me alone. So I went down, sat down, had my little notebook. I'm introducing who I am. And he's like, and he's like, you really want to be helpful to me? This is a true story. You really want to be helpful to me? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, open up your notebook. I'm going to tell you how you can help me. I open up my notebook, got my pen ready. He's like, number 1, write it down. I'm like, yep, 1. He's like, quit your job.
You're all stoked. You're 30 years old. You got this great position.
Seth, literally, I'm writing QUI, and I'm like, this guy's messing with me. And he's like, so quit your job, go back to tech where you belong, and number 3, leave me the hell alone. I was like, okay, this is going to be hard.
It gave you that much pushback.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And so I learned that leading through influence is far more powerful than leading through positional authority. Learning to lead by having influence. John Maxwell has a famous statement that says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. I think there's more to it than that, because otherwise you could just be the drill sergeant dictator. And so I don't necessarily agree, but boy, most leaders don't think through how do you create influence. And I go to connection every time. Everyone communicates, Steve. Everyone does. We say stuff, we email stuff, we text stuff. But do you guys remember, Steve, maybe you will, Seth, I don't know if you remember the show, the old Charlie Brown cartoons? Do you remember that?
Yeah, very well.
What did the teacher sound like in school? To a high-performing rep or even a low-performing rep, a leader can sound like the Charlie Brown teacher.
This resonates with me so well. I'm hearing, that's what I hear.
Yeah, and that's why we go back. Everyone communicates. Only a few connect. And so I'm a frameworks leader. The reason I do okay with the leaders I work with is I meet them where they are, and then I have frameworks for. It's easy to do metrics. It's easy to do process. There's 1,000 people, but it's the other stuff that makes you an elite leader. The word that I always say is, if you want to be an average leader, you'll hate my guts. But if you want to be elite, I can help you. And so how do you connect? It starts with, I have 5 words. They all have the letter I in it. And so I have the I in capital letters, and then you have the rest of the word. And the first one is I align, ALIGN. So if you want to be that sales leader that you talk about, you got to find a way to align to that person. And then you go back to the DNA of performance. 3 strands. I changed my DNA. Here's how you work with that dude, okay? You have to look at the 3 strands. Strand 3 is performance. It's the one everyone looks at. It's what the average leaders look at. Now, elite leaders look at performance different. It's not just did I hit my number. There's so many other things we could talk about. We could unpack all 3 of these strands, and I'd never get tired of talking about this.
Yeah.
But I don't need to talk about that, because this person you're talking about, they're hitting their number, so they don't want to talk to you about the number. I'm hitting it, so leave me alone. Fair? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what that means is they don't see you as a catalyst. That's what it means. When you have someone who won't listen to you, that means you're not aligned. They see you as someone that they have to keep at bay. They don't want you to be on your naughty list. They don't want those things. So that's the first thing. If anybody's listening to this and you're a leader, if someone's like resisting, that means they don't see you as a catalyst. The second strand is skill set. Performance is 3, 2 is skill set. So I'm going to ask you this, either of you guys. When do people look to change their skills? Usually.
When they're failing.
When they have to.
Yeah.
When they have to. So this person you're talking about, they're not in growth mindset. They're in grind mindset. And what I have is working. Leave me alone. And so skill set's interesting, but people don't usually like to go there unless they have to. That's why I always start with strand one, and you guys could probably guess what it is because we talked about it for half an hour, 40 minutes already. It's mindset. And nobody knows how to coach mindset. You want to know how most people coach mindset? Let's go to movies. You guys can tell I like movies and TV. The Waterboy, Adam Sandler's movie, The Waterboy. Have you guys seen it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. You remember Rob Schneider's character in it?
Mm-hmm.
What does he say the whole movie long?
I'm trying to remember.
I haven't seen that for a while.
You can do it.
Yeah. You can do it. You can do
He
it.
says it all movie long.
Yeah.
That's what most leaders' mindset is. You can do it. In my podcast, about 2 months ago, I had the mental performance coach of the Texas Rangers on my show. And Texas Rangers, for your listeners, last year won the World Series. Hannah Huseman is one of my favorites. It was her second time joining the show. After they won the World Series, I said, Hannah, I got to have you back. She said, let's wait till you give me my ring. So she had a ring, and we had her on the show.
Very cool.
Yeah, super cool. And I asked her about this. You can do it. And she's like, let me tell you, Rob, we won the World Series. Our pitching was good enough, but we won because we crushed the ball. And she said, and I'm the mental performance coach for these guys. Now, if these guys want to be the best hitters against the best pitching in the world, here's something that your listeners should think about. They don't go running to the cheerleaders with their pom-pom saying, go team go, or you can do it. They go running to people who are going to balance being challenging and encouraging. You got to be both. It was a super interesting insight from an elite mental performance coach. And so that's why mindset, we got to get past you can do it. And most plans for how you're going to succeed are like the first scene of Ghostbusters, another movie from the 80s. And in that scene, I love showing that scene when I'm training. They're finding their first ghost in the New York library, the librarian ghost, if you remember. And they say, what do we do? What do we do? And they say, someone should go talk to it. So they send Bill Murray up. He's like, where did he come from originally? Mm-hmm. And she puts her bony finger up and she goes, shh. And he goes back in and he's like, the usual things aren't working. What do we do? And this is everything in sales because we'll make cold calls or we'll call on people. And if they say, no, thanks, not interested, that's the same as the librarian going, shh. And we say, the usual things aren't working. I'm making the calls. And Dan Aykroyd says, I know exactly what to do. Follow me. And the music starts to build. He's creeping up, getting closer to this librarian ghost. And the last thing he yells, get her! And she turns scary, and she scares them, and they run out, and they run into the park. And the scene ends with Bill Murray laughing, saying, get her? That was your whole plan? Get her?
Yeah.
That's what most leaders' plans are. Here's your number. Get her. Yeah. And that's why most of these people don't love it because you're just going to say get her and you can do it. So here's an interesting, we talked about this offline. I think your listeners will like this. The consulting company, Bain & Company, did a study where they asked salespeople all around the world, if you had to pay out of your own pocket, how much do you value 1 hour of time with your sales leader? And you guys know what the answer is. I shared it. Yeah. But your listeners, we should pause for a second. Listeners, you're listening to this. How much do you think most people would pay it? If you're a leader, maybe you're thinking, how much would people pay for my 1 hour of my time? Because that's what you should be asking.
Yeah.
Number one answer, 54% of salespeople worldwide said not even a buck.
Zero.
Not even a buck. So here's why the person's resisting. You're not helping me. You're just managing me. Who woke up in the morning wanting to be managed? Nobody.
Right.
So that's why you have to align. You have to connect. Okay. Align. And then we have, okay, you've landed on the moon. Your goal was to get to the moon. What happens if we get to Mars? I love the how good can you get conversation. Because if we can start changing mindset ever so slightly, and I can have you throw away the mindset of, I do this level of performance. If I can have you do ever so slightly better, here's why it matters, especially in the world of sales. Again, I don't know if this is the right angle, Steve, but if you think, if you're perceived by your customer as 1% better, so here what you do at Chris Roberts Mortgage.
Right.
If the people you're talking to see you as 1% better than some other Yahoo that could do a loan for them, 1% better, 0.5% better. Steve, your company doesn't get 0.5% more of the business. If they think you're better, how much of that business deal do you get? All of it.
Yeah.
For being 1% better, you get 100% of a deal. So
all things being even, yes.
Yeah. So the game becomes help people make small improvements. And when you start helping these people look past the number and how good can you get, I want to learn, what are you chasing in your career? Okay, now that you're here, you go, what are you chasing in your career? It takes a different level of relationship, because I've had people try to have the what are you chasing in your career conversation and they don't trust their leader, they're not going to talk to you. That's why you got to align first. If you don't align, they won't talk. And the way you know is, what do they bring to you? As a leader, ask yourself, what do my people bring me? Do they only bring me deals to help them win? Do they only bring me problems to help them solve? Or are they bringing what they're chasing?
This is interesting because I've had salespeople, a couple hundred, right,
Yeah.
come through here. And as you're talking, I'm going through this Rolodex of names and employees and previous employees in my head. And the ones that I've connected with, I'm absorbing what you're saying. The ones that I've connected with are the ones who bring me the problems that aren't ABC, how do I do this, the technical things. They're bringing me things like, hey, you've probably dealt with this. Here's what I need to overcome with this client. How would you suggest that I do it? And as I think back, the ones who come to me with that trust and with knowing that I might be able to help them magnify their ability and fix the problem or solve the problem or help them identify and solve the problem are the ones that I've connected with, that I've really aligned with personally. We have an understanding, and it's just different. It's hard for me to put it in words, but I've had a test tube of that over my career, and I can sense exactly what you're talking about.
So here's one of the one-liners. I have a lot of power statements, but back to your how do I work with this person? You're asking me how do I correct. That's the wrong question, with due respect. Here's a really great leadership lesson. Connect before you correct. Connect so you can correct.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah, connect first. So usually there's some amount of clarity. There's 7 C's that lead for elite leadership, and C number 4 is clarity. I like to drive fast. Are you guys?
I'm a dude. We're dudes. We like speed.
So when it's foggy outside, does it change your driving behavior at all?
Slightly.
Slightly. Yeah. When I bought my motorcycle, when I got back from Mexico, I bought a motorcycle to celebrate, and I tricked it out. It was awesome. And the first night I had it, I went to dinner with a friend, and when I came out, it wasn't just dark; it was like packed in fog. I'm like, dang, I wouldn't have driven the motorcycle tonight in this condition. I didn't have a helmet on. I didn't have any of that stuff. I was just riding. I took back roads the whole way home because it's hard to see motorcycles anyway. Now I'm packed in fog, right?
Yeah.
But when the fog goes away, or you go up a hill, or the sun burns it off, how long does it take you to go from abundance of caution back to Ricky Bobby, I want to go fast?
Not very long.
Instant, right? So if you're a leader that has someone that's not growing or not going, usually there's fog somewhere. There's 7 types of clarity, 4 clarity questions. Whenever you see someone going slow, look for the fog. You find the fog, light's the world's greatest disinfectant. And when you can be that person that starts to blow away the fog, it helps you connect even better.
They just don't know where to pour the gas.
Yeah.
They just lack a roadmap.
Usually it's what good looks like. People, especially if you're in sales, like the people that came through your place, none of them wanted to suck. They all wanted to make a good living, I'm sure.
Yeah. Nobody wants to suck.
No one wants to suck. Now, everyone wants to win. There's a lot of people who they don't know what it means to ascend and do that work that you and we've all talked about. But man, if you can be the person who can create a well-lit pathway for that and eliminate the fog, I believe there's 3 things. If you can have clarity first, and then you can create systems that reinforce it. And when I say systems, I'm not meaning tech. I'm meaning like habits, things you do, right? We should have a set of systems as leaders and as high-performing individuals. Like I have a set of systems now for every part of my life. And that's why you see my passion. We gotta get back to passion. I can't wait to tell you. I have that conversation.
Yeah.
And then if you have systems that reinforce clarity, what you'll get is belief. And belief and hope they're 2 of the most powerful forces in the universe. I think love is probably the most powerful, But if you're like leading a team, if you can have them have belief and hope, and it comes from clarity and systems, clarity on what good looks like, clarity on 7 things, and then systems that reinforce it so I know what to do, I don't second guess. I'm going to have belief and hope. And if you can be a leader who provides belief and hope, man, there's no end. And that's what you provide for that person. Usually if someone's choosing grind over growth or status quo over growth, like if their numbers are good enough that you can have them be successful even though they're not growing, then they have to choose growth. But the elite leaders are good at helping people choose growth. Because here's why. We have people in this room, and you have a lot of listeners. They all have different talent. Is that fair? We all have different talent. Talent's a gift. You're blessed with different talents. But growth, that's a freaking choice. That's a choice.
Yes.
Don't let talent be your ceiling. And great leaders help people learn that I'll use my talent, but I'm going to choose growth. And if you let talent be a ceiling, you will look back with regret. And the best leaders are good at helping people choose growth because that's a choice. Talent gets you in the game. Growth is what makes you legendary and elite.
So back to your DNA strands, I'm glad you went there because I had a question in my mind. The ratio of mindset versus skill set. How far do skills get you versus how far, your mindset and choosing to grow?
Mindset dwarfs skill set. Dwarfs it.
Yeah.
You can't do anything unless you think of it first. Back to baseball, I was one of my great experiences. I was the first coach from the state of Utah to take a team to Cooperstown and win the Cooperstown National Championship. And with that team, we kept them together from the time they were 8 years old till they were 12. And I learned early on, you don't tell a kid. I was hardest on my own kid. I was hardest on Baylor. And I used to say stuff like, don't strike out. We need this. And what do you think that kid would do every time? I would say, don't strike out. 100% of the time, he would strike out.
Yeah.
Why? Because what are you thinking about when you go up?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about striking out.
For sure. It's like I'm a mountain biker, and it's if you're thinking about not hitting the rock, you're going to hit the rock.
Exactly.
Or a coach that says, don't jump off sides. It's listen to the count.
Yes.
It's just
mindset. There's a ski instructor story that learned when they were learning to ski, to do tree skiing, don't hit the tree. No, it's find the path.
All you hear is tree, tree.
And so Seth, you ask a really good question. I don't care who you are, what you're chasing. Everything you do starts with what you think about. When we won that national championship, we were losing to Florida 2-0 in the last inning. I lived a Disney movie. We were 0-0 going to the last inning. They hit a 2-run home run, and they thought that was over. Like, we could hear them in their dugout. It's over. It's over. And I'll never forget. It was my greatest speech ever. I said, in the history of the Salt Lake Sidewinders, 1 was 2 runs enough to beat us. And my catcher goes, I don't think it's ever happened. And I said, it's not enough tonight. And our first guy, it was him. He got up, got out. I was like, oh, so much for that, but then we got 2 guys on, and then the kid that came up, he has autism, and it's amazing because my youngest son has autism, and he used to have this thing of whatever happened is going to be what happened next, and he was 0 for 2 with 2 strikeouts. And in the past, he would have been like, oh, I'm having a bad game, or I can't do it, mindset.
Basing it off his past.
Off his past, pictures of the past. So I have guys that were coaches on the bases, and my job was the last guy in the dugout. Steve, I always like being the rah-rah guy. And I was the last guy that I talked to before they go up, and I learned it was always good swings at good pitches. It's not the pitcher's time, it's yours. I started that speech. Ethan, good swings. And he stopped me. He's like, I know, Coach, I'm going to go win the game right now. That's what he said to me. And he hit a home run to win the game. And we won 3-2. And so, Seth, we have to be massively intentional with what we think about, and then what we talk about, because that will fuel what you do, period. And it's proven through neuroscience, negative thoughts are 4 to 7 times more powerful than positive thoughts.
Say that again.
Negative thoughts are 4 to 7 times more powerful than positive ones.
Wow.
4 to 7 times.
It's a powerful statement.
And then what you talk about makes either one of them 10 times. So if you're talking about negative stuff, it's 40 to 70 times more likely that it will happen in your life.
We have, I guess, actually our show that just aired, good friend of ours, Mitch Casey. And Mitch talked about he built a vision board when he was in college. Cool. With some crazy, obscene goals. And his wife was like,
okay.
Yeah, that ain't happening. But, believed in him, but that's not happening. He's 31. He's far exceeded everything on that list. And he touched on this about mindset and really having a vision and seeing yourself somewhere. Another gal that we have on, it'll air before yours, but it hasn't aired yet. So if you're listening, you probably already heard this. If you haven't, go back.
Cool.
Does rehab for some NFL athletes here in the state, and travels all over. I think Seth asked her a question of how much of the body's ability to heal itself is mental, how much of it is physical.
What was the answer? I can't wait to hear.
Was it 70%?
Maybe more.
It was
all mental.
It might have been 90, but I think it was 70 to 90% was you have to believe that you can heal yourself.
Yes, exactly that. Like she says, I can fix you, but if you don't think I can fix you, then you're not getting better.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah, it was so interesting.
Which is why I say back to your thing about the dude that doesn't want to grow. They got to choose growth.
That's, and I want to get into passion a little bit more, but it's so, how do you take the person you want? I already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Yeah. It's like an addict. I want you to get better, bro. I want you to stop drinking, or I want you to stop abusing this, that, or the other. But I can't do it for you. You have to want to do it for yourself. And people have to want to do it for themselves. You, as a coach, a performance coach, specifically in sales with sales leaders, they're coming to you because they want to improve. Mm-hmm. They're reaching out to you. It's almost, is it impossible? This is a question for you. Is it impossible to take someone and put the belief in them and build a passion if they're just like, you know what I mean?
If they're not willing to invest in themselves, there's no amount of investment I can make in them.
That's the crux.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. At least from my experience, like if I don't believe in happy accidents. I guess that's the way to frame it. I don't think there's very many happy accidents. I mean, cool things happen to people, but you got to choose, man. You got to choose.
Yeah. It's kind of people have to want it.
And then you got to do. That's the other thing.
Do you find, are people motivated? Oh, sorry to cut you off.
No.
People, almost back to the addict analogy, do people almost have to hit rock bottom and like, okay, something's got to change, step off or step forward? Or are they motivated by what could be more than what couldn't, what they could get more than what will happen if they don't do what they're supposed to?
So Seth, you're asking, like, I love the way you think, Seth. It's awesome. Everyone's different. There's no right answer. One of the things that leaders make mistakes when they treat people in terms of averages. You got to treat a person as a sample size of one. And sometimes people will only change if they do hit rock bottom. Other people don't have to get that low. Other people are like, no, I want more. Like, I want more. And so you got to stay in chase mode.
Stay hungry.
You got to stay in chase mode, man. And when you stop chasing, like today, I took in a new client. He's 58 years old, okay? And he's taking a new job, and we had our intake today. And he's like, I'm taking this job because I have another chance to make an impact before I hit my 60s.
Beautiful.
Right?
Beautiful.
I was like, dude, it's up to you to make sure your best days are in front of you and not behind you every single day until there are no more days. Like, we never get to a spot where we say the good old days. No. It's up to Seth, and it's up to Steve, and it's up to me. It's up to each of the listeners. What are you doing to make sure your best days are in front of you, not behind you? And
it takes a re-up. It takes a recommitment. Because I'm 47. You're in your
52.
We're
52.
Okay, we're similar age. You're slightly older.
Yep.
But as you go throughout, and this is great because we're going to have 16-year-olds listen to this. We're going to have 70-year-olds listen to this. I know because they've already been texting me. My phone got shut off yesterday because I sent a lot of texts, and then they sent a lot of texts back. There's a lot of dialogue about this podcast and what's going on. But you have to you reach these points where you're like, okay, now I'm there, and I can just kind of operate on the knowledge that I already have, the ambition that I've built up, the motivation that's got me to this point, and you feel like you've arrived. And then the universe has a way of saying, hey, dipshit, you've not arrived, and you get humbled, 100%. Whether that's other people that are younger start to surpass you, or you start to just not focus on your skills. and you start to decline. Some of it's age, right? Yeah. But I'm not a big believer in that. I think it's more of an excuse. But you have to re-up. And I'm on a journey right now at age 47 where I really don't care what anybody thinks of me. I'm ready to find another level. And I think a lot of, and I'm not putting myself on a pedestal, I think a lot of people are saying, hey, I'm starting to wind down, right? But you have to find this level up. And what you're saying really, really resonates with me about mindset. Where do I want to be when I'm 55? Where does Steve want to be? Where do I want to be when I'm 60?
What's Steve's identity now? Like, you had an identity that got you where, so that's what I'm always saying is, what's your identity?
Yeah.
Like right now, mine, I'm the #1 performance coach in the world. That's my identity that I'm trying. I like how it fits, man. And so I got work to do to make that real.
Yeah.
But man, it's happening.
It starts with
that.
Okay.
Yes.
I love it. I didn't know we were going to go here, Rob.
Neither did I. That's why it's a good show. Thank you. I'm honored that you guys are having me on. I think I've been loving the other stuff that you're putting out. This is awesome. Chasing, and then passion, and I got so many things around here that
Can I ask you a question about? Let's say that you have someone you really adore and you really love them, but they don't really want to level up for themselves. They don't, and you coach elite. You want the guy who wants to get better.
Yeah.
Good to great, great to elite, right? If you really love somebody that you work with and you want it for them, does we talked about this over the phone, empathy, a couple 3 weeks ago, because I'm really in this empathy zone right now of trying to put myself in other people's shoes and really understand where they're at. But can you break through to that person with some empathy, aligning yourself with them, really loving them and saying, dude, I love you so much. You're capable of so much more than what you're putting out. And you start to see their eyes light up. Does that work for salespeople? And 100%. Does that work for sales leaders?
Here's a stat. Here's a stat for your ass, okay?
I love it.
Yeah. 90% of persuasion, 90% is a blend of empathy and competency.
Unpack that.
Yeah,
Unpack that.
Yeah, this is really, really good what you're talking about. So in the terms of trying to persuade someone that they can do better, level up, someone you care about, or a salesperson that wants to get a deal done, what do most people lead with, do you think? Do they lead with the competency of, I can help you get there, I believe in you, I want to do these things for you? Or do they lead with, I get you? Which do you think most people lead with? I'm not asking what's right, I'm asking what do most people lead with?
The first.
Most people lead with competency, and that's backwards. You have to lead with what you said, Steve. You're so smart. You're spot on. Empathy, there's a lot of, when COVID hit, everybody started talking about empathy, and it became a buzzword for a while. And I think it lost its meaning. Here's the Rob Jeppsen definition of what empathy is. It's I get you. Competency is I got you. Empathy is I get you. And the more I get you moments you create, the more connection you'll have. And then if you believe someone really gets you and understands you and has your best interests in mind, they can have conversations with you that other people can't. And fences come down. So you're right, lead with empathy. And my definition is, every single person in the world, every leader in the world, every person can say, I got you. Everyone can and will say, I got you, man.
I got you, bro.
That's transactional. Oh, it's no different than the drive-thru. You want fries with that? Yeah, I got you. Oh, you want to make that a big drink? Yeah, I got you. I get you so much more powerful. So I love that you went there. I think that's what the best leaders do. They lead with,
I think you're right. Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah.
And it has to be intentional. It can't be faked. It has to be authentic. I believe there's 3 C's of trust. Trust is the currency of every relationship. And the last one, I think, is the empathy part. The first one is called character trust, and that's, do I believe in your integrity and your ethics? The second one is competency trust. Do I believe that you actually can be helpful to me and that you got the tools to do something that can be useful for me? But the third one's the hardest. It's connection trust. Do I think you have my best interests in mind? Now, you can't ever ask for trust. It can only be earned through experiences. You have to create experiences where people can see what you're about by what they experience with you. And that's why I'm glad you said empathy, because too many people lead with most lead with competency.
Sure.
I want this for you. I got this for you. I can help you with those. There's all these things. I just, I have so many stories in my mind, Steve, but you're right. They have to feel like you get them and you have their interests in mind. Otherwise, they'll only give you what they have to and nothing more.
Yeah, they'll lock down.
Yeah.
And you can't connect them. So based on that statistic, only was it 52% of people said they wouldn't pay a penny.
54, not 54%. Even a buck. 54, not even a buck.
So you're saying 46% of leaders, or sorry, 54% of leaders are just getting it wrong. They're leading wrong. So the majority of leaders out there are just doing it wrong.
They do what was done to them usually.
Okay.
Studies show they usually do what was done to them.
Yeah.
And so I love how we're bouncing around. Usually here's what happens. People will invest heavily like in frontline workers. If you're sales, we've talked about sales, but like I coach operation leaders, marketing leaders, finance. My business has grown the part that these principles of leadership don't just apply to sales, they apply everywhere. And so for whoever the frontline is, we give them the tools. Like if it's underwriting, for example, we have underwriting tools. Or if it's sales, we have sales tools. We'll invest with your process, your tools, all that stuff. But the managers, like with the frontline people, process, tools, training, all that exists. But when you become a leader or a manager, they say, here's your team, here's your territory, here's your quota, and here's the most part, here's your warning, don't miss. Where's the leadership tools? Where's the leadership training? Where's the leadership, all those things? So what do people do? What was done to them? And that's why I believe there's a leadership crisis. It's very real. 68% of workers in the United States alone last year said they felt burnout. That's over 130 million workers that said, I'm burnt out.
Are there any statistics from employees that you know about regarding being appreciation, where they feel, and if not, that's fine.
I don't know them, but I love where you're going. Keep going.
But I wonder, and let me give you a backdrop on this question. It seems to me like when employees feel appreciated, not via a paycheck, but truly appreciated. I love, what you're doing. Thank you so much. I know work's been hard through COVID or whatever. I really appreciate your expertise, whatever, comments, just true appreciation. Not words, not just a bump in pay, although it probably should be an increase in compensation as well. But I'm wondering, from your perspective, how important an employer, a leader, how important is appreciation in getting more out of an individual and making them feel better about themselves?
So I don't have stats, but I can tell you observations. I feel like I'm a professional observer most of the time. I can give you my perspective. My mentor wrote a really great paper called The Balanced Framework. I wish this was mine. His name is Gary Rhodes. I give him all the credit for it, okay? He looked at two factors. Great question, Steve. I can't wait to share this with you. This is a really cool insight. There are stress factors in every job, yes or no?
For sure.
That's why we call it work and not play.
Yeah.
Okay. If we were to go into your boardroom, the three of us, and we said, okay, let's think of how many stress factors can we think of in the work environment. If every wall was a whiteboard, we'd fill up every inch of every wall. There's so many stress factors.
Different days, something else at the top of the list.
And what I've learned is too many organizations, and it's not too many, they focus on can I remove the stress factors from the job, but it's impossible to do. We should take care of the low-hanging fruit, but like we have regulatory things, and we have quota-driven things, and we have compliance-driven things, and there's just all these things. Like you can't get rid of it. It just exists. So the counterbalance to stress factors, and everybody's trying to make that lighter. If you think of this as a scale, right? The counterbalance to stress factors is what you're talking about. And this is really important. And leaders that get this become legends, okay? They're called passion factors. We're coming back to passion again, okay? And so instead of trying to just take all the stress off, because, dude, growth requires effort. Most high performers put more pressure on themselves than anybody else puts on them. And, pressure's not bad. Pressure's a privilege. Stress will kill you, but pressure, that's okay. I actually do my best work with the pressures on. Passion factors. if we were to go into that same boardroom and say, okay, what are the passion factors associated with the job? Far less. We'd be lucky to fill up one wall, maybe one column.
That's true.
Wall, okay?
That's true.
But they weigh way more. Passion factors are way more meaty than these stress factors. But the stress factors, they combine and they pile on top of each other, and all of a sudden you have someone quit or have a breakdown on something, and you go, that's what got him? It's the straw that broke the camel's back, but it's the cumulative effect. Do you see what I'm saying?
It's all of it.
Yeah.
I got to write this down.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's the cumulative effect. So the smart thing to do is to say, okay, let's take everything we can that makes sense, but let's understand our people's passion factors. What are the things that drive them? That's why elite leaders know. Like, I remember at my last company, I had someone, she was awesome, and her passion was her dog. Like, her dog. When she was interviewing for me at the job, I always ask people, because if you aren't passionate about something outside of the company, there's for sure no way you're going to be passionate about what we do inside the company. So I wanted to know people of passion. That's who I hired. And I want to know. And so I would get introduced to all of these crazy passion things. I'm in a band. I do this. My dog. I'm like, show me a picture of Doug, because I want, like, I'm genuinely interested. She had so many, like, this dog, like, I've never seen someone more passionate about a dog. I'm like, okay, she fits. She's passionate about something. Well, passion factors are interesting. So here's, Steve, to answer your question. The number one passion factor is not comp. Comp is actually usually a stress factor, especially incentive comp, because, like, I don't know if I got all the incentive comp right. Is it all in there? Did you do it right? What did I get? What didn't I get? It's actually a stress factor. Passion factor, number one, that may blow your mind, is unexpected rewards. Unexpected rewards is the number one heaviest passion factor.
In the form of what?
Different for every person. It might be what Steve said. Hey, Seth, I saw you do that. Just want you to know I saw that. Like, Steve gave me an unexpected reward when he said, hey, dude, just I want it on air that you look great, you sound great, you're doing it. It meant a lot to me. That's a passion. That's an unexpected reward. My favorite way of doing it, Seth, this was an easy one. I always like to have, like, little gift cards or stuff like that. I'd go say, Seth, maybe, but this was before streaming was a thing. I'd say, here's 4 movie passes. Now, why would I give you 4? I want you to take your significant other, and I also want you to take 2 people. So when you're at dinner, you're telling the 2 people, oh yeah, my boss gave me these for the 4 of us. So now you're going to be telling the people, and people are like, wow, what a cool boss that is. And unexpected rewards. I saw you doing X. Another favorite one that I had was, hey, Steve, I want you to know that when you did X, Y, and Z, it was awesome. Just take your wife to dinner and bring me the receipt. I don't care where you go. Eat what you want, drink what you want, do what you want. Bring it to me. Tell her Daddy did good. Okay?
Yeah.
Just tell her Daddy did good.
You know what's killer about what you're just saying right now is it's actually creates a really sexy environment to where you can have some fun with these things.
And they're inexpensive.
Yeah, and like, so you're telling me unexpected reward is way more important than compensation or incentive.
Let's get this right. You got to compensate them fairly.
No, I understand that, but I liked what you said about compensation and even incentive almost weighing over to the stress factor.
It is.
Oh, I don't know if I'm going to hit.
How do I ask for a job? Did they get it right?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to hit the bonus. Am I going to get the bonus next quarter?
Did they do it right? Like, I can't see how it's all in there. Or how do I ask for a raise? Like, I can't tell you how many people call me to coach them on how to ask for a raise.
Dude, this goes for more than just what we're talking about. This goes for parenting skills.
You're right.
This goes for any relationship you have in your life. And I think subconsciously we might all do this a little bit because we've had reactions and they've been positive and it's built a bond between 2 people. But that in the workplace, you're saying, is number one.
It's the easiest way to create passion factors. So it does 2 things. A, it's an unexpected form of recognition. And since it's unexpected, you get way more weight for it.
Yeah.
When it's expected, you get a little less bang for the buck, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense.
Yeah. The second thing you get from it is, it's another really high score if you look at Gary's work. It's a boss that gets me. Finally, a boss that gets me.
You're switching the tides.
Back to connecting.
Yeah.
You're aligning with them.
I have a boss that gets me, and that's worth a lot of money. Like, when I was in the financial services world running this team that was doing commercial loans, we knew that if we had a really strong relationship, we had a 20 basis point premium. We could be 20 basis points higher than a competitor trying to take it away. The relationship was worth that, to have someone who gets them. Same thing here. if you got elite people, we just need to know people are going to be trying to steal them away from us all the time. If your people aren't being recruited, maybe you should rethink who you have.
Yeah.
What builds loyalty then between an employer, a leader, and the people that work with them? What builds that loyalty? Is it the things we're talking about, the unexpected reward tied in with compensation, tied in with the alignment? Is there more to that loyalty between a boss and his employee, or an owner and his staff?
I think it comes back to trust. Trust is the currency of every relationship. Trust is the currency. And you can't ask for it. It can only be earned. I already shared what I think the 3 types of trust are, but it means different things to different people every time. And that's why that alignment. So passion factors. Can you connect to their passion factors? And always a boss who gets me is one. There's a few, they've changed recently, like post-COVID, like flexibility in how I work and where I work is important to a lot of people. I need to have the ability to make income. If anybody thinks I said income doesn't matter, I want to make it really clear that's not true. But more often than not, it becomes a stress factor.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would gloss over the fact
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we go to work so we can pay our bills, but you can perform so much better when you feel that, when you have that appreciation.
But if you're a boss, if you got people say, I've got a leader who gets me. Like one of my favorite things to say in coaching is like when I was like, okay, so what are we chasing? What are we chasing? I have a coaching framework. It's an acronym, EMPOWER, EMPOWER. The E is the most important part. E stands for enrollment. So when I'm working with a member of the team, it's signing up. Open enrollment for healthcare is when you choose your elections and your selections for your insurance. Well, what's your enrollment for how I'm chasing growth? What are we chasing? And that enrollment where they say, this is where I want to go, or I say, man, Steve, as we've been working together, I've observed X, Y, and Z. And what I don't think you realize is you're capable of Z squared, and here's why. I'm like, oh, really? So when they have the trust, loyalty comes, I think, it's more than trust. It's, do I have a leader who helps me get places faster than if I was on my own? And so if I was working with that person and they say, I want this, I say, oh, man, Steve, that took me 3 years to figure out. Let's see if we can crack the code of 1. I want it to take you 1 year what took me 3.
You had a podcast that I listened to, and let's give a plug on this, and we'll wrap this up, about with giving some more of this. But you had, first of all, where do they find your podcast?
Everywhere podcasts are. It's the Sales Leadership Podcast with Rob Jeppsen. Every podcast source has it. So
if they just search Rob Jeppsen, they can find all your tools straight through there. And by the way, phenomenal. I've listened to several of them.
Thank you.
You had a gal on, and I'm going to butcher her name, so I won't try to, but you were talking about storytelling.
Annie Mossbacher.
Yes. Great episode, and you both had some really good insight. How important is storytelling? For example, the employee that comes to you and he's got an issue, or a sales guy that comes to you and he's got an issue. How important is it to have a story to tell him to align where you do get him? And more importantly, does that story need to be a sports analogy or a personal story on something you've seen that you can experience with them? How powerful is that storytelling in a situation like that?
So I think storytelling is one of the top 3 skills a leader needs to have. I think it's that important. People don't treat it as a skill, but story is that's how humans learn. You go back to the days of the caveman, they were writing their stories on the walls of the cave, right?
Yeah.
And so the skill comes in having a story where it's relevant. So for me, a sports story is great. For Annie, wouldn't have been that great.
Yeah.
Annie's not a sports person. She told me that. And so if you go back to Annie, one of the skills she taught in that episode is, can you transport the person you work with, an employee or a customer, as the hero of that story?
Yes, she did. Yes. If you're listening to this and you're hearing what we're saying, go listen to this episode. What was there? Annie
Mossbacher.
Annie Mossbacher. Do you remember the episode number? You can just search it.
I can't remember.
It was in the last month or last couple weeks.
2 episodes ago.
Yeah. Beautiful examples of telling stories and the value of those stories and making the customer the hero of the story.
And so
she was eloquent with it.
And so here's why I think it's important. Number 1, stories makes it so you're relevant to that person. the language I use in storytelling, it would be like, Seth, as I listen to you, it reminds me of. Or Seth, as we talk about this, I can't help but think about a person that blah, blah, blah. That's the way that I like to transition stories. It's one of those two things. Like, now it's relevant. And if the story is compelling and they can see themselves as the hero of that story, then it builds credibility for you instantly. So now it's empathy that leads to competency.
Yes.
Now it's empathy that leads to it's funny how these are all coming full circle.
They're all connected, Rob.
I mean,
you could talk here for hours, but all these things are connected. I'm just fascinated with passion and empathy right now because it's kind of my own personal journeys. That's why I'm dwelling on that.
So we have to talk about passion. We have to take. I don't know if we've been too long. I've loved
no.
I'm in no hurry.
We're fine.
So that's a question I have. What's your take on? You brought up a burnout statistic.
Yeah.
What's your take on burnout and passion? Because some people are just in the wrong career.
Yep.
Is it a change of career they need? Is it a mindset shift they need?
So here's again. I'm going to say it again. So please don't think I'm being like trite.
Yeah.
People need to be treated as a sample size of one.
Yeah.
And so that's a really easy mistake to make. Nobody likes to be looked at, well, the industry or the company averages are this, so that means you are too. Nobody likes it. That reinforces almost immediately. We talk about you get me.
Yeah.
That almost immediately says you don't get me.
Right.
And you never will. Right.
Yeah.
And it will alienate. And so sometimes it is a change of career. Yes. Sometimes it's a change of mindset. Yes. Sometimes it's someone that says, let's work on this together. Like, it's different for every single person. And involved leaders, like, I think that one of the most important skills, I said there's 3 skills. One of those top 3 is, are you a present leader? Are you an observant leader? Are you only looking at reported data, or are you like making most of your calls by what you see? The very best leaders know that observed data is more important than recorded or reported data. And so, Seth, I would say whenever there's a problem and burnout's approaching, I always look for the fog first. Where is it hard to drive where it shouldn't be? Usually it's because it's harder than it should be. And then I look at other things. But let's shift to passion just for a second.
Yeah, for sure.
I think this will help answer that. It's my favorite word. It's one of my very favorite things to talk about. Does anybody know the Latin root of the word passion? No one ever does, but I love to ask it anyway. And I hope you'll fact check me. I hope everything we say you fact check, okay? Because it means you'll learn even more, because you'll read way more than I can tell you now. The Latin root of the word passion is passio, P-A-S-S-I-O. Drop the N. So now I'm going to ask the second question. Does anybody know what passio means as directly translated in Latin as we can? You ready? Before I tell you, let me back up. Steve, you said you're into passion. What's your definition of passion?
An unbridled, I just came up with that, so don't butcher me. An unbridled desire to do something, whatever it is, sport, whatever it is. You have this like overwhelming passion or desire to do something.
Love it. Yours is very close to mine. Mine is a strong or barely controllable emotion or feeling, just like yours. Okay?
Keeps you up at night.
You got one, Seth?
Yeah, I'd say similar. Something that you care about so much, you'll do whatever it takes.
Love it.
To get.
Okay, so let's start with that. If we're unbridled, whatever it takes, barely controllable, we triangulate this really well, right? Passio. You ready to know what passio means? The root, before we add the N, and it means unbridled, whatever it takes, or barely controllable. Ready? It means to suffer or to endure. So before you can love it, you got to be willing to suffer and endure a little for it. And I love that. Passion isn't something that you just want so much you hope you get it. It's something you want so much you're willing to do a few things that others either can't or won't because they aren't burning with it the same way you are. So that's why I like to know what people have passion for, because it lets me have insight on what they're willing to do extra stuff for. Because why? Before I can have passion for it, I got to be willing to fight for it.
Just embrace the cliche, embrace the suck.
Yeah.
And just die in the moment every day. One of the guys I love is Alex Hormozy.
Yes.
And it's because he is so authentic. I mean, he wears a wife beater and the same shorts every day, but he's just like, he grinds. He's like, I hate the word should. I do me.
Yeah.
And he's passionate about what he's passionate about, and he doesn't care about the optics of it, and he just grinds and grinds and grinds, but you can tell he loves it. He started somewhere. He started from the dirt at ground zero, and he's just got so much enthusiasm for life and what he's doing. And when I think of passion, a picture of him pops in my head with his beard, and just the way that he grinds. He's just so enthusiastic and passionate about what he does. He's just that's the picture that comes in my head. So
let's take that back to what Seth said. Seth said, why are they burning out? What do we do? That's why I go to passion factors. Because if you can inject a little more passion into the workplace, they'll endure, they'll grind, they'll suffer a little more. I don't need them to hate it, but that discretionary effort when it's tied to something they're chasing. One of the funniest, dumbest stories of all time, one of my family. So when Baylor got home after being in the Dominican Republic for a couple of years, I took our family. It was the first family vacation post-divorce. We went to the Bahamas. We stayed at this cool resort in the Bahamas. And it has a famous water slide park there. And one of them is a race course. It's on a Mayan temple, and it's a race course, and it's got these digital timers on it.
I've been there, yeah.
Okay? Yeah. And when my boys and my son-in-law saw there was a digital timer, it froze everybody at the tracks. The only girl there was my daughter Gentry, and she's like really chill. She's like, you guys are stupid. We stayed there for a while because they were tracking fastest time. And at first, since I'm bigger than them, they couldn't beat me until they started Baylor's like, I'm staying here, Dad, till I beat you. And he came and found me at the beach. He's like, Dad, I was like a 4.6 or something like that down. He's like, Dad, I got a 4.5. I said, you got video? And he's like, no. I said, then you didn't beat me.
Didn't happen.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
Didn't happen, bro.
Yeah, it didn't happen. And it was interesting because I'm at the beach. He's like, I'm going to beat you. And he was so interested in the chase. He was like, I said, if this is how you want to spend your vacation at the Atlantis, then you're welcome to, but I'm going to be at the beach. And that night at dinner in the fish fry district, it was awesome. We were talking about our day, and he's like, Dad, I got to tell you what happened. So when I decided I was going to beat you, this is all about chasing. You guys will see it. I actually use the video of this in my trainings. The first thing I did is I got on my phone and I did a Google search on how to go fast on the Challenger course at Atlantis. And he said, I found some videos and I found some blogs. It gave me some good ideas. And that's when I beat your 4.5. And he's like, but then I was asking the lifeguards there. So he did what I thought was really interesting. He got it. I should take that. First, he did the grind. All he did was grind. He went down that stupid slide over and over, and it didn't get him any faster. It did mess up his back on those joints, you know? And that's when he said, okay, how do I get better? So he decided to choose growth, and he did a Google search. And he was close to me and beat me once or twice, but he wasn't dominant. So he said, I'm going to get a coach. And his coach was the lifeguards that were there. And he went to one of these guys and said, what's a fast time? I thought that was a genius question. He didn't say, how do you go fast? He said, what's a fast time? So it was about capability. And the guy's like, how fast are you going? He's like, 4.4. He's like, it's okay. And he's like, but sometimes, every now and then, we'll have a guest that can go faster than 4 seconds. They'll have a sub 4 second slide. And he's like, teach me Obi-Wan, right? Teach me. So he taught him all these things. Like when you get to the top, most people sit down. He goes, I want you to stand like a sprinter and grab both sides. I want you to chuck yourself out. Don't worry. You'll feel like you're free falling, but it'll catch you. And all these different things to go fast. Like when you go over the bump, I want you to do a dolphin kick so you catch air and have no friction again. And when you come through where the laser is, don't come through with your heels, point your toes, because that could be the difference in 4.0 and 3.9. And so that night at dinner, he's like, Dad, 4 seconds is possible, and I promise you I'm going to get it before we leave here this week. I was like, if that's what you want to do on your vacation, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
The very next day I was at the beach. He's like, Dad, I broke 4 seconds. And you guys already know. What did I ask him?
How?
No, do you got video on that?
Oh, yeah.
You got video? And do you know what his answer was? He's like, I don't need video because I can do whatever I freaking want now.
Let's go up. I'll do it right now.
That's what happens. So Baylor, you guys know Baylor. He's kind of like the life of the party dude. He's like yelling to the other guests, I'm going to break 4 seconds. And he gets this big crowd. And I've got this video of him against my son-in-law. They go down, and Baylor gets 3.9. My son-in-law gets 4.7. And the funniest part is when Baylor's done, he turns and he looks at the coach on top, and he's celebrating. He's like, yelling, 3.9. And my son-in-law's got this look on his face of like, what just happened here? And a person in the crowd's like, is that the fastest time? And Baylor looks at him and goes, no, 3.96 is the fastest time because I did it last time I went. And I was like, that's what chasing does. Like, he didn't feel like he was working. He didn't feel like he was grinding. He was in pursuit of something that mattered. And if you want to be a leader who has elite, legendary impact, help them chase something that matters to them for reasons only to them. And the best leaders, they're the alignment specialists. Don't let your members of your team align to the company. You find out what they're passionate about and help align that to what the company needs. You won't just change companies, Steve, Seth. You'll freaking change lives.
I love that. I love that. I love the fact that you said sample size 1 of 1, because it's not a paintbrush over everybody. It's aligning yourself one-on-one, whether you're in sales and you have customers, whether you're a leader and you have salespeople. It's aligning yourselves with who they are, what they want, and connecting with them so that you can make that impact and change lives, not just careers, incomes, things like that, but change lives.
That's our role. So I have a leadership philosophy. Steve, this is a good way to wrap, I think. Most leaders don't have a philosophy. They got a lot of ideas. I always help people, let's build a philosophy so you can have it as a base and you can be consistent. Every philosophy should start with a purpose. What is your purpose as a leader? If you think about the gas tanks, there's three grades of gas. Like the cheap gas that's when you're fueled by pressure. Okay. The mid-range gas, that's when you're fueled by I want to perform. But the 91, the 92, the 93 gas at the gas station, that's when you're fueled by purpose. And here's mine. My mission is to create career-changing and life-changing years for the people I'm lucky enough to work with. That's my purpose. And we're fueled by that, you'll go places the other gas will never take you. Because if it's just performance, you'll hit there and stop. If it's just pressure, you'll freak out, burnout. But if it's purpose, once you land on the moon, then you got to go to Mars. Once you land on the Mars, then you got to go to a different solar system, right? And that's why purpose is the very best fuel.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
Rob,
I love it.
You've been amazing. I can't thank you enough for your time.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome. I love what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
I'm already a subscriber. So
awesome, dude.
I'm already a subscriber.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Tell us a little bit more to find you. How do they get in touch with your company? I know they can go to your podcast, but tell us more about how they can get in touch with you.
Really simple. Like, my company is the Jeppsen Performance Group. I work with leaders usually of all kinds. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me at my website. It's JeppPG. It's Jeppsen Performance Group, JeppPG.com. If you want to hear the podcast, it's anywhere you listen to podcasts, the Sales Leadership Podcast with Rob Jeppsen. We have 50,000 listeners. It's been awarded as one of the top 1% business podcasts in the world now. And I bring the very best sales leaders and leadership influencers onto that show every single week.
Yeah, you do.
So, yeah.
You're a big voice on LinkedIn as well. That's a good place for them to connect with you. You do a lot of your own writing on there, which is beautiful, by the way.
Usually there's stories of my coaching with other people.
There's one in particular, as we wrap this up. You were on a plane ride.
Yep.
And you sat next to a truck driver.
Yep.
I don't even want to give away. If you are interested in hearing about it, go to LinkedIn and read Rob's post about this, because it's got some really good insight. That was beautiful, by the way. I don't know if ChatGPT wrote that.
No, I wrote it.
Jeppsen.
And here's another thing about gratitude. I'd finished a leadership workshop in Tennessee, and I needed to get home because I wanted to be with my son. So I tried to go standby from Tennessee to Atlanta. I was the last person on. I was the only standby that made it. So happy. Then from Atlanta to Salt Lake City, it didn't look good. It didn't look like I was going to make it. And that meant I was going to miss my son Crew's birthday and stuff. And I was the last one. And when you get that last seat, I was the last row in the middle. And most of the time, I would have been pissed about it. But I was never so grateful to have a seat in my life as that one. And then it turned out I met this truck driver.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this dude, usually I put on my headphones and I'm just leave me alone. I decompress.
Yeah.
That dude opened my mind to a lot of things that day.
And you wrote a beautiful post about
Thank
it.
you.
So go and read that. Rob, thank you. Can't tell you how much we appreciate it. Hopefully you'll come back on in the future.
You'll have me.
So much.
Yeah.
We'll have you. Have so
Let's
much
go.
valuable
We have lots
insight.
more to talk
Let's
about.
go, Seth.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Rob.
Rob.
Love what you
Appreciate
guys
it,
are doing.
boss.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
That was fun.
That was awesome.
That was great. Thank you.
That was fun.
I could have gone in 72 different directions. I think we just hit